Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Welcome to this webinar session. I'm Toni SCHOENENBERGER. I'm the Executive Chairman of STARS. STARS, as many of you know, is a global platform for dialogue, and we even want to think about the unknown unknowns. In this context, I'm pleased to inform you that STARS is preparing two symposia in Singapore and in Switzerland in the middle of this year. And we are preparing a study tour to China, to Shenzhen and Guangzhou. And there will be company visits of Tencent, BYD, some unicorns, etc. And we are also planning a study tour to Romania, Bucharest. Please visit our website for more information. Now, no doubt, geopolitical, geoeconomic, and geotechnological intelligence is a must for any leader in business and society. So today we are continuing our webinar series on the topic of complexity is destiny, orientation in times of no direction. And today we have the great privilege to talk to HUANG Jing. Welcome, Jing. Great to have you on this session.
Thank you.
HUANG Jing is Chinese-born and he holds a US passport. He's co-founder and CEO of Transcend Consulting. He's a university professor and director of the Institute of the US and Pacific Studies at Shanghai. He was professor in Beijing at the Lee Kuan Yew School at NUS in Singapore. He was at Brookings Institution and he was also at Stanford University, etc., etc. His main research includes security in Asia-Pacific, US-China relations, and China's foreign policy. And I'm pretty proud to say that Jing is also a member of the STARS Scientific Board. In other words, Jing is one of the very few leading experts on geopolitics. So Jing, we are very much looking forward to your insights. We have approximately 30 minutes now to discuss with HUANG Jing. If you have any questions, please use the Q&A feature below to type in your question. And I really strongly recommend and encourage you to do it as quickly as possible. So let's start. And I have the privilege to ask a couple of questions first. Now, complexity is destiny, we said, Jing, right at the beginning. If we look at the world today, a forward-looking tracking of geopolitical, geoeconomic, and geotechnological dynamics is needed. Now, the question, the more, let's say, general question would be, what worries you most these days?
I think what worries me most, of course, is United States under President Donald Trump's leadership, not just because great uncertainty within the number one superpower that is the United States, but also because his policy seems to violate all the rules the United States used to uphold highly, violate all those rules like recent invasion to Venezuela, and also the way he treated the Ukraine war, and the way he started the so-called tariff war, and all of this. This worries me, not only because this kind of behavior seems to have broken all the rules that we know for the global order, but also because the tendency that this could set example for all of us to follow, especially those big powers. If that's the case, we're going back to the jungle rules, which endangers all of us, of course, including United States of America, especially at the time of great power transition. That is, we have a major power, a great power like China is rising. And we also have some powers like Russia, who is doing something that's really wrong. And of course, now we have United States saying to join the rank of Russia, or even worse, because not only United States under the leadership of Donald Trump just attacked a sovereign state or sovereign country like Venezuela, but he also threatens to, to take the same action against Greenland or even Canada. So that really worries me. And of course, like I said, inside United States, we have very deep division, which transform into a great uncertainty in the future.
Yeah, thank you very much, Jing. I want to deepen this a little bit. Obviously, and no doubt, geopolitics is at a crossroads, so to say. You mentioned Venezuela, you mentioned Greenland. We could also mention Gaza, Israel. We could mention Iran, etc.
Yeah.
And it's interesting to see there is hardly any reactions from China and Russia. And I want to provoke you now a little bit. Are China and Russia the geopolitical losers in the end?
I think let me talk Russia first. I think this is, for President Putin, this is a great opportunity, even God-sent opportunity, because it makes Europe to almost face two enemies. Number one is Russia, of course, in front, and also looks like the Trump administration stabbed Europe from behind. This has emboldened or enabled Russia to continue its attack in Europe. And it makes the peace process even more difficult because the appetite of Putin has to be enlarged. And now, not only he wants neutralization, so-called neutralization of Ukraine, stop the so-called enlargement of NATO, but basically he wants the entire Europe to cave in, to give up, to compromise Europe's own security interests. And also Chinese, of course, China, in my view, is not unhappy to what has happened, because now China can tell everybody, say, look, this is what I told you. United States is an imperialist power at its core. And also this kind of behavior also gave China excuse to do the same to the small countries or whoever around China, because the capability United States just demonstrated in its capture of Maduro and his wife. China also has this kind of capability. And moreover, the United States has some very important allies in Asian Pacific, like Japan. And this kind of action put Japan in a very difficult situation. And especially recently, the tension between China and Japan, of course, this provoked by the Japanese leader Tai Kai-chi. And I think her remarks on Taiwan and Japan is going to, he implied it's going to use so-called force to get involved in Taiwan affairs. Is very provocative. It's very unnecessary. It's wrong. But having said that, I think Donald Trump's attitude and his approach towards Taiwan and Japan also, I think, benefits China tremendously. And China, another reason that it pushed more friends towards China's arms. Other countries like Brazil, even in the Latin American countries, and also some other countries, global south. In other words, three sentences or three points. Number one, it enlarged China's maneuver room, strategically speaking. Number two, it gave up the moral high ground or discourse, the dominant discourse to China so easily. And last but not least, it helped China to increase its influence spiritually and materially among the global South countries, especially, and also in the world at large. Sorry. So
Yes.
I believe that leaders in Moscow, in Beijing, are not unhappy to see what Donald Trump is doing.
What are you expecting from the visit of President Trump to Beijing, probably in April of this year?
I think that Donald Trump needs to work with China. That's good news. I think he realized that working with China, he has much to gain, because we know that United States has some internal problems. Only by working with China, he can manage or overcome those challenges. he faced internally. But for the Chinese, it's also expecting that working with the United States can help China to manage, overcome some challenges in China, because as I said before, the so-called computation between the United States and China is a facade. Beneath it, the real challenge, the most formidable challenges for both Washington, D.C. and Beijing comes from within. And by working with each other, they can, it can help them to overcome or at least manage these challenges. But the problem is that how and with what kind of attitude or demands that Donald Trump is coming to Beijing. Of course, China does not want him to come here triumphantly or like he has an upper hand. China wants he come here like he has more to ask from Beijing rather than an offer. In this regard, China really takes very tough stance on the issues of Venezuela and the issues of Ukraine war and so on and so forth, and it's not yield. And China also put huge pressure on Prime Minister Takaichi, who is going to visit Washington, D.C. before Trump's visit to Beijing. And also China will not yield an inch in terms of tariffs and trade negotiations and so on and so forth. So just like my good friend Ian Bremmer just said a couple of days ago, he said that we seem to be seeing two presidents of the United States. One is Taco, another is Fucko. I'm sorry to say that. It seems that, of course, China wants Donald Trump to come to Beijing as a Taco president, not as a Fucko president. This is what China expected. But for the United States, for President Donald Trump, of course, he doesn't want to be seen as weak, as in a weak position. He won't come here to be seen in a tough position. But the problem is that how can he create this kind of situation in which he seems to be on top? He seems to be coming from position of strength, not weakness. Frankly, I cannot see how he can create that situation, because now he has made himself very isolated in international community, even among the allies of United States. And without support of international community, no matter how strong the United States of America under his leadership appears to be, he cannot, in my view, can hardly have a position of strength, because as a major power, what really makes you strong is not just how strong you are, how great your capability is, but how much support you enjoy in the international community. In that regard, I think President Donald Trump has made a huge mistake, has misstepped very badly.
Mm-hmm. There are now a couple of questions from the audience. First, Gordana Kirans is asking the following question. China made investments in Venezuela with Maduro. What leverage does China have in order to force US to uphold the previous contracts in mining?
I think that China has said this very clearly. If China cave in Venezuela, then all the Chinese investment or project in Latin America will be in danger. In other words, we say that China is largest trade partner to almost all the Latin American countries, Brazil, Chile, Mexico, so on and so forth. You name it. That's why China is on the same side with all the Latin American countries except Argentina, who is condemned this military action. And with China will hold strong in Venezuela. China has invested over almost like 100 million 120 million something no, I'm sorry, yes, 100 over, I mean, 1 billion, $1.2 billion. I'm sorry to say that, in Venezuela. Let me look at number. Let me have a look. No. It's 12 billion
12.
US dollars in Venezuela, huge investment. So if China led a military action as such to wipe out China's investment, or China cave in to withdraw, and of course it cannot withdraw, then the domino impact will be very, very bad for China. That's why China sent in a special envoy Of course, people argue that China made a strategic misjudgment even a few days, a few hours before Madura's capture, sending special envoy. I think that was misreading of the situation. Of course, China has a very clear understanding how dangerous situation really was before U.S. military action. That's exactly why China sent in a special envoy to strengthen China's presence in Venezuela. Of course, when special envoy step in, he has to meet with the President Mandela, which was still in office at that time. We know that special envoy is still there, and of course, China can make some very strong position on that. Say, look, if United States take any action endangers China's investment in Mandura, I believe China will take some countermeasures. That is why, if you notice that in over 1 hour and 33 minutes press conference with 17 major military oil companies in the White House, and there are some reporters repeatedly ask President Donald Trump and especially Secretary of State Rubio about which country is United States' major adversary. You can say Rubio a couple of times. The word is on his tongue, but he simply cannot speak out China. He tried to hold it. Don't say China because they really want to have a good deal or grand deal with China, which is good. And so far, we don't say United States has taken any action to really damage or undermine China's investment in Venezuela. And that, of course, is what Bremer said, a tackle. So in that regard, I don't know the final result, but given what we have seen so far, China has been taking a very tough position on this. The United States so far has not taken any actions or even threatened to take any actions to undermine China's investment in Venezuela yet, which, frankly speaking, has surprised me a little bit.
We want to benefit from your expertise on China, and I'd just like to mention a report from the German Marshall Fund of the United States regarding Taiwan. The report argues that analysts have overlooked a critical dimension of deterrence. The consequences for China if such a conflict were to begin, and especially if it were to fail. And they speak of 100,000 casualties, US dollar 10 trillion in cost, social unrest, countries leaving the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, leaving BRICS, and leaving the Belt and Road Initiative. What is your view on Taiwan?
I think people misread or misled on this Taiwan issue so badly. For mainland China, for Beijing, the issue of Taiwan is never about Taiwan. It's about United States of America. Even from Mao Zedong's period, it has made it very clear, the Chinese leadership, if China cannot overcome the possibility or hardships created by US interventions, China will have to be very careful about Taiwan, especially when you want to use force against Taiwan, because the United States is much more stronger than China in the Western Pacific, especially in the so-called First Island chain. If China use force against Taiwan, it have to face intervention, very strong intervention of the United States, because Taiwan is a linchpin of all the US security architecture in Western Pacific. If Taiwan is lost, the linchpin is gone, entire architecture, entire structure will collapse. That Japanese made it very clear. That's why Japanese said when Taiwan has a problem, Japan has a problem. I think Japanese made it very clear. So that's why Chinese leaders understand if the balance of power in Western Pacific is in favor of the United States, China has to be very careful. China's top priority is not reunification, but prevent Taiwan from becoming de jure independence. That's a game all the way. But now, seems the balance of power has been changing in favor of China. In other words, China may be more and more strong or even stronger than the United States in the Western Pacific, especially in the Taiwan water. Which United States also admitted right now, because when I was in Washington, D.C. 2 months ago, I was told by insiders that, look, if there is a confrontation between United States and China, United States, let me quote, is totally outgunned by PLA, the People's Liberation Army, in that water. So they know that will be a huge damage. But if China hold the upper hand, China becomes stronger in that area, and Taiwan is not the issue because Taiwan is unmovable carrier. Taiwan goes nowhere. For the Chinese leadership, what really matters is to control the situation around Taiwan. It's not necessarily to take over Taiwan because if I was sitting in the Zhongnanhai, if Chinese leaders think like this, they can take over Taiwan any moment they want right now. But the problem is that if they take over Taiwan, they cannot run Taiwan as successfully as it is. They're going to have a Taiwan under Beijing's leadership, under Beijing's control, become economically, slow down or even bankrupt and politically, socially unstable. That will be very bad for Beijing. The two issues: number one, can they really control situation around Taiwan 100%? And Taiwan has nowhere to go. Second, if we want to take over Taiwan, to what extent they can maintain stability and the prosperity of the island? That's the issue. It's not about take over Taiwan and so on and so forth. In my view, I think leadership in Beijing has great patience. They're very, very wise on this issue. So all those hooplas, all this, China is going to take Taiwan by force and so on and so forth. You guys, those people underestimate the wisdom about Beijing, they misread the situation. And I think this is totally a kind of worry. Don't have to, because China has made it very clear that China shows strength and resolve. China will not, not allow the ravages of war get into Asia Pacific. China wants peace and stability in the Asian Pacific, where we have 61% population, 60% of global economy, and the growth of global economy, 75% of growth of global economy come from Asian Pacific. That's what China wants stability and peace here. So if that's the kind of demand, a kind of a strategic goal in Taiwan, why should China, destroy this kind of situation by using force to take over Taiwan? That does not make sense. Again, the issue of Taiwan for the Chinese is not Taiwan's per se, but it's United States. If United States is no longer dominant in this region, Taiwan is not the issue because it has nowhere to go.
Thank you for this analysis. I have a question from Friedrich Haas from Germany. A big talk in German industry is the separation of the tech and IT stack. Foreign companies start to invest in R&D centers in China for China. How do you assess this process of the emergence of two separate, not compatible IT tech stacks for the global economy? Is it finally a de-globalization, since only a very few big tech companies will be able to finance and operate in two separate systems?
I think that's what worries me deeply. I just yesterday I have a very senior former U.S. officials visited China, and I had a dinner with him, and he said, let me quote, he said, "We're all toast as a human being by this AI industry," because I agree with him, because what is driving our AI industry is not human being, is a very greedy capitalist. It's a so-called accelerationist in Silicon Valley, like Peter Thiel and Musk and so on and so forth. We know that this is very explosive. And the right way, in my view, is that we should figure out how to manage the AI before we really get into it. But those guys want to accelerate the AI industry before we even figure out how to manage it. The father of AI, Hinton, has made it very clear that he has the same kind of worry. But having said that, I would say that for United States and China, the two leading AI leading powers in the AI research and applications, they should have the obligation to make sure that at least they have to cooperate with each other rather than allow AI to get into two tracks. The good news is that as early as Biden administration, with Raimondo visit China, United States and China already setting up the working groups on AI development. In other words, just like former Soviet Union, United States, they try to work with each other on the nuclear arms, not because they want to help each other, but they want to know what other side is doing. This is what I call the passive cooperation. The purpose are two. Number one is to know what the other side is doing so that we're not going to get into two different tracks. At the end of it, each side has something that the other side cannot prevent or cannot hold guard against. And second, of course, is to monopolize this industry. Now we have the same situation. China, United States are first tier. The other countries, including Germany, way behind. But now the Germany's approach, that is to same have two tracks. One, the companies will have some operation in China for China, and then operation in Germany or in Europe for Germans or for the rest of the world. I think that is quite practical, pragmatic approach. But will this lead to two tracks? I do not believe in that because as United States under Donald Trump's behave like this, I think that it is rational or it is necessary that the Germans will have to have more kind of relationship, strengthen its relationship with China. Of course, de-risking is still necessary, but I think it benefits both sides. If you look at the trend, I say that more and more German industries come to China. For example, Volkswagen and Audi are my clients, and they increased the investment in China. It's not just they want to make cars, EVs for the Chinese to compete with other Chinese companies and Tesla, but also eventually they want kind of incorporate the technology and the kind of sense they do here in China back at home to strengthen their computation and also to enlarge their market share over there. I believe that human beings behave all the same. When they say where the benefits are, they are going to work on it because after all, if we're still doing market economy, not a socialist economy, if we still believe in market economy is a way we can maintain prosperity, then market economy always going after three goals. Number one, the most sufficient distribution and the utilization of resources. Number two, the highest rate of our production. And number three, maximize our profits. If we're still going after those three goals, I do not believe that deglobalization will be the case. Deglobalization, in my view, is a political topic. It's not an economic topic because, after all, we're still governed by the laws and rules of market economy, not a so-called socialist economy.
In this context, I just have a final question, and I'd like to deepen this aspect, as we have many business leaders and investors in the audience. What is your thinking of the prospect of the Chinese economy? And Bruno Gehrig is asking a particular question. What happens to the Chinese labor market generating youth unemployment at a record rate? So this as a final question.
I think Chinese economy is also under huge pressure, not only because of internal problem, but also because China's number one trading power and number one manufacturing power facing the world that is not doing very well entirely. Europe, Japan, Latin America, South Africa, Africa, and even United States. All those economic powerhouses, all the market under huge pressure of slowing down, and China, of course, failed. Internally, China is also in a transition. Usually, China's economy is driven by demand side, but now demand side is there's only so many buildings can be built, so many highways or trains can be created. Now China has to go to other side. Another thing that after all those years, decades of so-called reform and openness, China still have kept two industries or two areas closed. Number one is asset, number one is capital. The capital market and the asset market is not opened up yet. All of this create a problem for the Chinese liquidity. In other words, China's asset is not very liquidable. It's totally the other examples. In United States, every $6.5 asset, the $1 can be liquidized, That's why they have so much debt, because you can mortgage and remortgage your house, for example. But in China, it's the other way around. Every 27 yen of asset, only 1 yen is in the can take out as a cash too. So China is a huge problem. And how to solve that problem? Again, like I said, the idea with the United States and China work with each other to help each other out, because what the United States have is a lot of money, but does not have goods. What China has is China have a lot of goods, but no money. So they can really help each other out. But that's the ideal situation. The real situation is that Chinese leaders have to figure a way out. Number one, to really to make market economy more active in China, to try to decrease the state intervention, and that's what they're doing. But how effectively, I don't know. And also try to be more open up to the outside world. And again, a final issue is that China, I think Chinese leadership realizes the problem. If you want to compete with outside world, you have to compete with quality, not just price, number one. Number two, you have to be fair. You have to let others have a chance to join in this kind of great progress. In other words, everybody has to benefit from it, but not just Chinese themselves. We have a new word called a revolution, involution, whatever. China has to understand to share. It's not just an idea, but it's a necessary practice when you're trying to work with others.
Thank you very much. Time is up, Jing. We have to stop here. First of all, I want to thank you very much for your brilliant insights. I think we all benefited a lot from your expertise and your insights. So thank you very much. We wish you all the best.
Thank you for having me.
We are really looking forward to having you again at some STARS events. Thank you. We are continuing this webinar series on the 29th of January. The speaker will be John R. Allen. He is the strategic advisor to the chairman and CEO of Microsoft. He was the four-star general, U.S. Marine Corps, and he was the former commander-in-chief of the U.S. and NATO forces in Afghanistan. Hope to see you then. Goodbye for now, and enjoy the weekend. Thank you.